pet hoarder. And just a quick warning, this one is horrifying. It's 6 a.m. and the roosters have been crowing nonstop for the last 2 hours in our sunroom adjacent to our bedroom. I'm now sitting in the basement as flies swarm around me, and I've given up swatting them because there's too many to bother. The basement is the area of the house with the least amount of flies. On top of the rooster noise is the cackle of male quail that reside in our living room. They live in the base of 3 cages that are filled with budgies and cockatiel. When I wake up, I remember to put on my slippers and I hope I get to them before stepping in dog urine or fresh dog poop. Our carpet in our master bedroom is saturated in dog urine with many spots that haven't dried out yet. Yesterday, my wife bought our daughter a new tortoise and a frog. The tortoise will be added to the aquarium with our bearded dragon. The bearded dragon, which is often free to roam the house because my wife feels it'll be happier. It is free to poop on our furniture or floor or where it was left out last. As I sit here in my basement, the only place where I do not allow any pets, I'm listening to a rabbit thumping its paws on the floor above me. Or it's the sound of it biting and ripping apart our wall or furniture. I'm not sure which noise it is, but I don't care anymore. We have at least 6 rabbits. Their little claws make a loud scraping and tapping noise as they scurry and hop across our laminate floors. The main level of our home is littered in rabbit droppings. The droppings get pushed to the side as our 4 children and us inadvertently kick them around while walking through the main level of our home. The dogs won't likely get let out this morning to go to the bathroom. The smaller dog doesn't even obey the command to go out anymore. He just stares at you confused by your directive. If he does go outside, he just comes back in to find a place to pee and poop in one of our bedrooms. Our backyard doesn't have much dog poop because it's mostly in our bedrooms. It'll stay there for days on end because there's no expectation that it shouldn't be there. The new smell from the giant rug I bought for the basement has worn off. It smelled like glue and dye, and it drowned out the odors from the dozen chickens that reside in our family and living room. They live in a couple 36-inch fabric pop-up enclosures filled with pine shavings. It is saturated with chicken, poop, and urine, and has soaked into our oak hardwood floors, permanently damaging them. The stench is eye-watering. We have a lot of feathered friends here. In our master bedroom are 3 more cages with a variety of exotic birds that sing loudly all day long and leave a permanent mess of seeds on the floor around the cages. They are free to roam, and so our room has droppings along our bed's headboard, on our pillows, along the sides of the doors where they perch, in our bathroom mirrors, and down our shower curtains. Our sunroom has 30+ chickens, and about 8 or 10 of them are roosters, and the roosters crow all day. This is where the flies breed. They come in through the 40-year-old siding door that is often left open. This door separates the sunroom from our living area and our kitchen. The flies swarm in, and at any given time, there are dozens of flies in our living space. The heat and humidity bake the sunroom floor, which is covered in chicken poop and urine, and the odor spreads through the house. Our house is in a suburban neighborhood. We do not live on a farm. In addition to these animals, we have 2 pet rats. They are sweet, but as you would expect, their cage is not well maintained and it stinks 90% of the time. Our boys' room has a snake and axolotl aquarium. One of our daughters has an algae-covered fish aquarium that we fill with wet water whenever we hear the filter screech because the water evaporated too low. She also has an unkept cage with a hamster that is rarely played with. Right now, I'm listening to the mice eat through the foam board insulation in my basement. I want to get rid of them, but it's challenging with all the access to feed throughout the house. They seem to be breeding and entering through the home at a faster pace than they can be exterminated. I am not a pet person, and this is driving me nuts. My wife is a pet hoarder and has ADHD. Our backyard is a ghost town of quail cages from last year when she was really into quail breeding, and we had over 150 living in our backyard. Now there remains broken and half-built cages and mounds of shavings and wood chips that she intended to use as bedding. Scattered in random places in our backyard are household garbage bags of chicken poop. When you try to lift them, they fall apart because they weigh 30 to 40 pounds and the bags have deteriorated from the sun. When challenged, she seems to delight in the frustration it causes me because she is not happy in our marriage. It seems that accumulating animals is bringing her little bits of dopamine with each acquisition. I'm tired of living like this, and I don't know what to do. Our children think this behavior is acceptable, and they often confide at me for not being on board with the animals. They say I'm not a pet person. It's true that I'm actually not a pet person, but what we have going on here is irresponsible, unsanitary, and illegal. This is pet cruelty and normalizing neglect of animals. Edit. People think this is a fake post, but it's real. I'm not uploading pictures for privacy, but it's genuine. I wrote it in this style just to express everything because it's distressing and aggravating, and I haven't expressed it to anyone. I'm seriously asking for advice. It is slipped out of control. The amount of pushback from my wife when I address the problems creates a lot of tension and distresses the children. She just keeps bringing home animals. The last time I threatened to rehome the chickens that she was keeping in the house, she became extremely angry and combative. She rehomed them, but not after a slew of insults and claiming I was being totally unreasonable. Then she just slips back into the same behaviors because she never believed it was a problem in the first place. We've had company come to our house, but no one has called CPS or animal control yet. Seeing all these reactions has me realizing just how bad it is from an outside perspective. And a CPS call is a serious possibility, and that is terrifying. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, for starters, if you know it's illegal and you get busted by cops feeling particularly aggressive, then you'll face just as much legal trouble as your wife. As for your wife, she desperately needs a therapist. Another user says, dude, I grew up in a house like this and it effed up all of the kids. If you care about your children, you would get off your butt and call animal control. Then get everyone in your family therapy. Are you asking for advice or just venting? Because I get the need to vent, but you need to take action now. And the OP replies and says, I'm seriously asking for advice and also venting because it really effing sucks, and I feel trapped as a hostage for the sake of providing sanity for my kids. In what way did I F up everyone if you don't mind sharing. And the person replies and says, my mom was an animal hoarder. Please help your children. Get them out of there. My brother and I are 27 and 28 now. We both have a wide array of health problems and triggers. My brother can't smell animal waste without feeling violently angry. I feel physically dirty every day from sitting in filth for years, even though my own house is now clean and I have good hygiene. It's like I can't get the smell off me. All this time later, days where I have nightmares of being stuck in my mom's hoarder house are even worse. I know you feel stuck. I know it's easy for a stranger to look at it in very black and white and you deal with all the nuances. But please, I need you to know without a doubt, even if your kids seem to enjoy and love all the animals, of course they do, what kid doesn't? Them living in filth is going to eat at them if it hasn't already. Also, from experience, get your kids checked for parasites. And someone else says, this is abuse. It's animal abuse, it's illegal, it's disgusting. There is not anything vaguely okay or even redeemable about this. This is effed up. And then we don't get an update for a long time, about a year and a half later. But let's get into the update because the OP did come back a year and a half later, and the update reads as follows. Some of you may remember my post venting and looking for advice on what to do in regards to an extreme animal hoarding situation with my wife. Dozens of chickens residing in the home and a variety of animals roaming outside of cages in the home, feces, and a rampant mice infestation. After posting, I sought therapy and started getting my bearings straightened out. In the midst of setting firm boundaries and beginning the work to clean up literally 2 tons of chicken poop, sand, and pine shavings, and resolving the rodent problem, a call to CPS was made by a third party and an investigation ensued. Believe it or not, by that time, much of the situation was resolved, animals rehomed, home cleaned and sanitized. Nothing came of the CPS investigation, and it was pretty quickly closed out. However, the relationship was essentially permanently damaged as my wife continued to deny the problem was out of hand. Deep resentment developed towards each other. Fast forward nearly 12 months and my wife requested a divorce. We are now separated, awaiting an official legal divorce. I have moved into a very nice home and have the kids 50-50. My physical and mental health has dramatically improved. My kids now have a organized and clean haven. They seem happy. It seems inevitable she may lose custody of the kids at some point altogether. I'm hoping she can keep things in check, but due to the constant denial that there was a problem, it'll most likely repeat. I may have no choice but take steps to ensure the children's safety at some point, further disrupting the children's lives from their otherwise loving mother. Limitations on pet quantities and cleanliness standards are written into the divorce settlement agreement. By the way, wife has been in therapy for a couple of years in the midst of the hoarding. I guess you could say the therapist was either not savvy to the situation or enabling to an irresponsible level. I'm leaning towards the latter. She became more and more emboldened that I was causing her problems as opposed to looking inward. Her therapist seemed to fuel the delusions as far as I could tell. Anyways, thanks for all your advice and getting me to wake up to the madness I contributed to through inaction. And then the OP gives us another update 6 months later titled, I called CPS and am having regrets about it. And this update reads, my soon-to-be ex-wife has a bit of an animal obsession, but otherwise is a loving and attentive mother. We share 50-50 custody of 4 children. When we split up last year, I had worked really hard to get the house cleaned up, helped to rehome dozens of animals and eradicate a mice infestation before moving out. Since then, she has collected dozens of animals again, and the home reeks of animal urine. My oldest child has reported that the mice have returned. There is so much animal feed around the property and inside the home that wild mice have endless food supplies. The dogs are not potty trained, and every caged animal cannot be cleaned regularly enough to keep the odors at bay. When I got the kids for the week, all their belongings, clothing, had the strongest, pungent odor of dirt and urine. My home is clean and smells fresh, and the kids' belongings made my whole house stink. 2 of my kids are wearing the same clothes day and night for multiple days at a time. I called CPS based on my attorney's advice, and I feel awful about it. It feels and looks vindictive, even though that is not my intent. I feel like garbage, and like I'm betraying my kids' mom's trust. I want to co-parent amicably, and I feel like this will take away from that. At the same time, she has a problem that is interfering with raising our children in a safe and sanitary environment. Also, my kids love having all the animals. Granted, they love them, but they don't recognize the amount of time and cost to properly care for them. They just like the excitement of having a bunch of pets and animals. This is going to also strain my relationship with the kids to a degree. They don't realize that, number 1, the animals cannot possibly be cared for adequately. Number 2, that they're going to school stinking to high heaven. Number 3, that the home is a health concern for them. And number 4, they see me as the mean dad that wants to take away all their precious animals, which are a part of the family. Part of me is just scared of my soon-to-be ex-wife, like actually afraid of my safety, LOL. I don't know if she knows yet, and part of me wants to go over to her house and help her again clean up and tell her again to rehome the animals. I know this is not realistic, as it was the primary source of our arguing in our home when we were together. I told her before moving out that I would always expect that our home be sanitary and not overrun by pets again, but that I would be amicable and fair in our divorce process. Now it just feels like I'm being petty in the process of a difficult divorce, even though logically it's not true, but I can't help but shake a yucky feeling about calling CPS. And the top comment says, you prioritized your kids' well-being over doing the easy and comfortable thing. I can assure you that your kids will be thankful that you took steps to intervene when they are older. If you allowed them to continue to live like that, you'd be complicit in neglect and betraying your own children. It's not fair to them that they are living like that or going to school smelling bad. The only way your ex will change is if there are consequences for her actions. If you go clean up her house, you'll be shielding her from those consequences and enabling her to continue to neglect your children. So while it might feel bad to do the right thing and it might make life more difficult, it is your responsibility as a parent. I hope that you follow through and do whatever is necessary to protect your kids. And another user says, just don't admit to her that you're the one who called. For all she knows, the school called about them stinking. Reports are anonymous. I have had to call CPS on my co-parent too, and it sucks. But you have to do what's best for the kids. I just sat on the stand of court and testified that my ex sends my daughter home stinking while watching him roll his eyes at me. But I got a modified custody arrangement that keeps my daughter from going unbathed during the school week for too long. And then the OP posts another update a day later, and let's get into it. Update. I continued feeling uneasy all day and a bit panicked that before CPS came that she would be able to conceal, hide, or talk her way out of the situation. I started feeling like I would come out looking worse and the kids would not get a clean home out of the call. CPS talked to all of my kids while at school today. My 3 little ones all reported that they are all fine from what I could tell. I did not pry or ask for more details of their conversation, but just generally asked if the interview was okay and how they felt about it. They all seemed fine and like it was just discreet and no big deal. However, my oldest child's visit from the agent was separate as he goes to middle school. He spilled all the beans and complained heavily about the unsanitary conditions in great detail. I did not tell him, warn him, or coach him in any way whatsoever. In fact, I try not to even complain about the home to them, as there is nothing they can do about it, and it would therefore not be helpful. It would only cause them stress. He detailed that he asked his mom to buy a new $10 shirt and she told him no. She doesn't have the money. He then told the CPS agent that 2 days later, he saw her come home with tons of new chickens and animal supplies. Ouch. I'm saddened that he has been living in those conditions. I feel bad that their mom was probably humiliated by that story being retold to her. My son corroborated every complaint. The only reason I know what he told the agent was that their mom called him tonight and was quizzing him on his interview. I overheard everything he said as I was cleaning the kitchen, and he was right there, boldly telling his mom all the things he told the agent. I didn't even know he was interviewed today, as we had a full afternoon of driving to kids' activities and making dinner, rushing to do all the parenting things. Anyway, I am relieved that there was corroboration, and it sounds like this may light a fire under their mom to again make some changes. I feel like this could end up being a regular cycle in the years to come. I hope she hangs out in there, finds the courage to recognize there is a legitimate issue, and works to get better. I haven't been reached out to by CPS yet, but I suspect to get a call soon, and I hope they're able to convince her that changes have to be made. And the top comment says, "You did the right thing. Did you offer to help her before calling?" Many times when it's a breakup, the dad leaves cause behavior, etc. of the partner, but you leave the kids. If it is horrible for you and you leave, why leave the kids? Imagine what kids must be going through at school. Surprised school hasn't reported the situation. And the OP replies and says, "I didn't offer to help clean up. I feel like offering to help clean up would be enabling when what she really needs to happen is finding homes for these animals, and that would be entirely offensive to her. She fought me bitterly when we lived together over her right to keep the animals. I really want to help clean up the house to help her, but I cannot do that if she is not willing to address the core issue." And then we don't get any sort of word from the OP for a long time, but 2 years later, the OP commented on a post that was titled, "My ex's home that we used to share with our kids is really filthy," which concerns someone going through almost the same thing, and offers small updates. But then the OP's comment on this is, "This is challenging and I don't have a perfect answer, but I do have experience with the same issue. My kid's mom had dozens of animals, including birds not in cages, that were not potty trained, not properly cared for, nor cleaned up afterwards. When I would pick up my kids, they would be wearing the same clothes as they were dropped off in a week earlier. My entire home would smell like urine just from their belongings they would bring over. It was sad, alarming, and maddening. It left me with no choice but to get authorities involved. The problem is that the co-parent may not see it as a problem, so they may villainize you for raising an alarm. If there is any way to amicably have a conversation about your concerns for your children's health and social well-being, then do it. I would exhaust myself trying to first have conversations that express concern. If changes are not made, I would escalate it to let them know that the kid's health is a concern, and you may make a call to authorities if needed. Just bear in mind this escalation that will result in permanently affecting your co-parenting relationship. They will likely retaliate, become more difficult in every way possible. It's easier for people to react in this way than to get proper mental health and take accountability. I'm about 3 years from when the situation was at its worst, and I don't regret calling authorities. If anything, I'm still frustrated that she put me and the kids in a situation where that was our only option to enact a change. My comment is to provide you with validation and reassurance that you can get through it. Try to keep the relationship amicable. Document the concerns and take pictures if needed, because your co-parent is likely to deny and downplay the legitimacy of your concerns. Keep it civil and fact-based, and focus on the kids and not being vindictive towards your co-parent. Best of luck. And the OP adds in the comment and says, we had guidelines regarding quantity of pets and cleanliness standards written in our custody agreement. Neighbors also began calling in to make complaints about the dogs barking. Chickens getting out. Home is in a suburban neighborhood, not a farm. Between visits from CPS and animal control, things have improved. And so from that last final comment that was, 2 years from the original thread, it seems like the OP said things have improved, which is a great sign. But let's get into some of the top comments on what people's thoughts are on this thread. One user says, these poor kids and animals, they deserve better than to live in filth. And someone replies and says, I hope OP found a way to teach them how animals should be cared for, because if he didn't, one or more of them could simply repeat her behavior in adulthood. I'd personally make them volunteer at a local animal shelter for a year, and then have them pick out a pet together and be properly responsible for it. And someone else says, I am an adult who grew up in a pet hoarder house. I remember reading the first post and showing my friends to explain this was a little worse than my house, but it was the first post I've ever seen that could describe how awful it was. We had tons of animals. They would rotate out and in because my mother had zero attachment to them and always wanted another animal. We had like 8 outdoor cats, 10 plus dogs at all times, multiple birds, rats, ferrets, and other caged animals, lizards, ducks. We did not have a farm. We lived in a regular suburb. We couldn't play in the yard because she didn't pick up dog poop. Our house smelled awful and was super dirty. Things were broken and chewed up. I didn't mind it as a kid. I loved some of the animals, but at some point she'd get rid of them because they were bad to get something else. But as I got older, I was too embarrassed by the state of our house to have friends over. The animals running wild stressed me out, so I hid in my room with whatever dog I was currently attached to. I can tell you sad stories that make me upset even now, how some of the animals were neglected. I'm 35 now, and I haven't talked to my mother in 6 years. We had a falling out over her having 15 plus dogs that she wasn't taking care of. I couldn't handle it anymore. She is a part of rescues that encourage it, which is insane to me. I live in a really tidy house and have one single spoiled cat. This was a long-winded comment, but I'm glad OP got the F out and is doing his best for those kids. And like I said, this is the last update we have ever received from the OP, but I'm just kind of blown away by this entire thread and also the commenters on this thread, because I have personally never heard of pet hoarding. I have, of course, heard of hoarding where people, just get a bunch of stuff or junk and keep it up in their house, don't want to throw it away. It creates a unsafe, unsanitary, and just gross living conditions. But I've never heard of pet hoarding, where these people have just tons and tons and tons of animals just living in their house. Basically just like a zoo, and just pooping and peeing everywhere. And I've just never heard of pet hoarding before. Obviously, it's probably some sort of mental illness, but I just find that concept so interesting and unique because, I've just never heard of it before. But it truly is sad, and I hope that the OP's ex-wife got the help she needs, because she obviously needs a lot of help. And I hope that the OP and his kids were able to move on and, hopefully reconstruct their family. But this is just a wild and honestly horrifying and gross. 26 female, caught my 34 male husband texting a minor. I am on a... My husband insists on keeping this one painting of a woman. When my husband and I first got married and moved in together, we had a few fights on personal space, on chores, and on decor. Namely, my husband insisted on keeping this weird painting of a woman. Who is she? I'd asked when I first saw it, leaned against a mountain of moving boxes. Dunno. Got it at a rummage sale. It was an original painting. Oil, I think, judging by the way the light reflected off the brush strokes. It depicted a young woman standing in a dark room, looking over her shoulder at the viewer. She was actually rather beautiful. Blonde hair falling over her shoulders like a waterfall. A white cotton dress. A dainty, heart-shaped face that was somehow haunting rather than cute. She was illuminated brightly, but the room behind her was dark. The contrast in her pose reminded me a little bit of a girl with a pearl earring. But it didn't feel classy, or pensive, or beautiful. Instead, it felt creepy. Especially because my husband insisted on hanging it above our bed. I mean, it's a beautiful painting, I said, but it just doesn't fit with the modern decor. Neither do your Funko Pops. Okay, but they're small. The painting is enormous. For Pete's sake, the woman is nearly life-sized. I want to keep her where she is. It seemed like a big deal to him, so I dropped it. But it wasn't easy. Sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night with that horrible feeling that I was being watched. Then I'd look up and see her haunting gray eyes staring down at me. I didn't get much sleep after that. And there was the one time I swear she moved. Was her hand always like that? I asked Eric, after getting into bed one night. Her left hand. The fingers are kinda open, reaching out behind her, like she's waiting for someone to grab her hand. Yeah, she was always like that. I could have sworn she wasn't always like that. Then again, I generally avoided looking at the painting. It was so uncomfortably realistic. When I stared into those gray eyes, I almost felt like I was making eye contact with a person. I lasted 2 weeks, then I begged Eric to move it. Can we please move the painting somewhere else? I really hate looking at it when I'm going to sleep. It's the nicest piece of art we have. It belongs above the bed. What about the sunflower one? That's just a print, he complained, and it's so basic. Come on, I'll move my Funko Pops out if you move the painting out. He heaved a long sigh. Fine, I'll move her. That was another thing. He often referred to the painting as her. It was weird. So he moved it to the stairs, but honestly, that was worse. Every time I went downstairs, there she was, staring at me from above the landing with those piercing gray eyes. At least when the painting was in the bedroom, I was usually asleep or facing the opposite direction. I hit my breaking point a few days after that. For some reason, I couldn't sleep. After tossing and turning for an hour, I decided to grab a snack downstairs. I got to the top of the stairs, and there she was. I hadn't turned on the main lights, only the nightlight in the hall bathroom was on. With everything so dark, the background of the painting melted into the shadows, but the woman still stood out, with her pale face and white dress. And my stupid, sleepy brain interpreted it as an actual person standing there. I jumped about a foot in the air, and I would have fallen all the way down the stairs had I not caught the banister at the last second. "Can we please get rid of that painting?" I asked the next morning. Eric turned away from the stove, set the spatula down. "Why?" "Last night, it scared the frick out of me. I nearly fell down the stairs." He stared at me, as if unable to understand. "She scared you?" he asked slowly. "Well, more like startled me. I thought it was an actual person standing there." He looked at me. Then he broke into laughter, and after a few seconds I started laughing too. It was pretty stupid now that I thought about it. I know I was sleepy, but still, I thought the painting was a person. What, did I think we were being burglarized by a young, beautiful blonde woman in a nightdress? For now, I'll move her into my office, then you don't have to look at her at all. That sounds good. And for a while after that, things were okay. I sort of noticed Eric spending more time in his office than usual, but he had also had a big deadline for a brief coming up, and what? How would that be related to the painting anyway? It's not like he was staring at her for hours on end. Except that's exactly what I caught him doing. One night he didn't come downstairs to eat dinner with me. I called up to him a few times, no reply. So I went upstairs and walked into his office to find him staring at her. He was just sitting there with his computer closed, no papers on the desk. Swivel chair turned towards the woman in the painting. "Oh," he said suddenly when I walked in. Then he quickly stood up. "I was just about to come down, just sent in the brief a few minutes ago. They're really happy with it." He smiled broadly at me, as if nothing were wrong, and then slipped past me. I listened to his footsteps thump down the stairs. Had he actually just finished working? Or was he just sitting in here, staring at her? I ultimately decided not to bring it up. The painting was out of my sight, and that was great. Besides, I had bigger fish to fry, like my own deadline coming up for an article I hadn't even started. But then, on Friday afternoon, I accidentally overheard him on the phone. The voice was muffled through the thick wooden door, but it wasn't hard to hear him. He was shouting, almost. "I'll have it in by tonight." "No, I knew it was due on Wednesday." "Well, my wife fell down the stairs. I had to take her to the hospital." Those words sent a chill through me. I barged in. "Why are you lying about me falling down the stairs?" His face paled. He ended the call and turned towards me. I'm so sorry, Tara, but I needed an excuse. I missed the deadline on that brief, and it's my job on the line." "The brief? You told me you finished it 2 days ago." He nodded, silently. I crossed my arms. "Look, Eric, your work is your business, but we've spent like all of 1 hour together all week because you've been locked in here all day, every day. I mean, are you even working? Or are you just sitting in here, staring at her?" His dark eyes locked on mine, and then his voice grew soft. "You're jealous of her." "What?" "You shouldn't be, Tara," he said, stepping towards me. "The painting makes her prettier than she was." I froze, stared at him. Then I finally found the words. "Are you saying this is a painting of someone you know?" "No," he said slowly. "Sorry, I misspoke. I meant whoever this is a portrait of, I'm sure it's a flattering likeness. All portraits are flattering like that." I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who is that painting of, Eric?" "I told you, it's not Eric." I stepped towards him, my legs felt weak, wobbling underneath me. "Who is this a painting of?" He only shook his head. I couldn't sleep that night. I know it sounds silly, being so worked up over a painting, but you have to admit it was weird. He was obsessed with this thing, for whatever reason. Why didn't I see the painting when we were dating? Did he hide it away in the basement? That was the only one place I'd never been. Had he built a little shrine down there? Paintings? Candles? The whole 9 yards? The thought of it made me sick. Is it an ex-girlfriend? An ex-wife even? That he never told me about? Getting a painting commissioned must have cost a fortune, especially a huge, detailed one like this. I mean, as much as I hated that thing, it was clearly done by someone incredibly gifted. The glint in those piercing gray eyes, the small dimple on her right cheek. But clearly he wasn't keeping it to appreciate the artistry. He knew her. And whoever she is, he's obsessed with her. And then I got the craziest idea. I sat up in bed, slowly, quietly, turned to Eric. He was fast asleep. Then I slipped out from underneath the covers, grabbed my phone from the nightstand, and tiptoed out of my room. My bare feet padded softly across the hallway as I made my way towards his office. Then I pushed the heavy wooden door open and stepped inside. The office was cold, much colder than our bedroom. Goosebumps picked up my bare arms, but I didn't waste any time. I reached over, fumbling across the wall, and hit the switch. The light flicked on. The blonde woman stared down at me from the wall. Her eyes seemed to follow me as I took Eric's leather chair and dragged it across the hardwood. Once against the wall, I stepped onto it. We were staring at each other face to face. I'd never been this close to the painting before. My face inches from hers. This close, I could truly appreciate the detail. Each individual eyelash painstakingly drawn, curving up from its follicle. Thread-like striations of light and dark gray filling her irises. Her skin so pale and creamy, dotted with the tiniest of pores. But I wasn't here to appreciate the artwork. I lifted my phone and took a photo. Then I brought up a reverse image search. It took a few minutes for me to find the right website and upload the photo, but when the results loaded, I gasped. I expected maybe one result if I were lucky. Some sort of facial recognition that would match the painted face to a photo, or maybe the artist's website would come up and mention who the subject was. But instead, dozens of thumbnails filled the page of the exact same painting I'd been staring at for weeks. Fingers trembling, I clicked on the first one. It led to a news article. Search continues for missing Franklin art student. My heart dropped. Little black dots danced in my vision. I collapsed into the chair behind me, trembling, and began to read. Anya Kelsing, 23, went missing after a hike with her boyfriend. The two became separated when they came upon a bear. Her backpack was found roughly a mile from where the sighting occurred, but no trace of Anya was found. In the caption under the painting, Kelsing is a third-year student at Franklin College majoring in fine arts. She recently completed a self-portrait that was exhibited at Lake Cure, above. I clicked on the next article and the next, but they all said the same thing. Hike, bear, disappearance. All of them showed a photo along with her self-portrait. She looked strikingly identical to her painted likeness. None of them mentioned her boyfriend's name, but it had to be Eric. The most recent article, from 5 years ago, was a video clip of her parents begging for her search to continue. Sadly, judging by the news articles, it never did. I don't know how long I sat there. All I know is that I suddenly jolted from my thoughts by a loud thump in the hallway. Footsteps, coming towards the office. I shot up. He can't find me in here. I glanced around the room, looking for someplace, any place that I could hide, but it was probably too late. Surely he'd seen the light on from under the door. I ducked under the desk just as he stepped into the room. Tara? I clapped my hand over my mouth, trying to silence my ragged breath. He's going to see the chair out of place. He knows I'm in here. He knows. Tara, you in here? Why did I hide? I could have just said I came in here because I heard a noise, needed a pen, couldn't sleep. Why the fuck did I hide? Now he's gonna know that I know. Tara. But maybe it's fine. Maybe the bear got Anya. Maybe Eric had nothing to do with it. Isn't that more likely than Eric being a murderer? There you are. I looked up and screamed. Eric was crouched there in front of the desk staring at me. I was looking for a pen, I stuttered, lamely. I wanted to write down. I remembered I had to pick up groceries tomorrow and I needed to add something. He tilted his head, a small smile on his lips. I don't think that's the truth, Tara. Make a break for it. I started to lunge out from under the desk. His hand quickly shot out and grabbed my wrist. Hard. You figured out who she is, didn't you? That's the only reason you'd be hiding from me. I trembled in his grasp. What did you do to her? I whispered. He let out a dry laugh. So you think I'm a murderer? How nice. That's the first conclusion you jumped to. No, I don't think you're a murderer, I swallowed. Stupid. If he killed her and he knows you know, then you're dead too. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Just what happened? They didn't find a body. Did the bear get her? He didn't reply, just stared at me silently with those cold, dark eyes. I was jealous, I continued desperately. But now I understand. I wish you just told me to lose someone like that. Of course you'd want to keep the painting. It's all you have left of her. You should have just left it alone, he said, his tone oddly emotionless. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I screamed and he lunged for me. It's over. His hands were clenched tight on my wrists as he dragged me out from another desk. I pulled back, trying to wrench myself free, but it was no use. Thump. A loud crash sounded behind us. Eric whipped around and for a split second his grip released. I acted instantly, pulled free from him and ran, pivoting around the desk and racing towards the door. As I glanced back, I saw Eric starting after me, but I also saw what had made the noise. The painting of Anya had fallen from the wall. It lay askew on the floor, her gray eyes staring emptily upwards. I was always a fast runner. Eric was only halfway down the stairs by the time I was up at the bottom. Bursting out into the cold air, I began to scream. He grabbed me from behind and tried to pull me back inside, but it was too late. Lights were flickering on. Our neighbor rushed out of his house, dialing 911. It was over. The police arrested Eric for assault, and once I told them my story of his obsession with Anya's painting, they were able to search the house, and hidden in his office drawer, in a small box, was a pair of gold earrings. The same earrings Anya wore on the hike that day. The case is slowly mounting against him. I'm hoping, praying Anya gets justice and that a jury convicts him of her horrible murder. And would he have done the same to me if I hadn't escaped? If Anya's painting hadn't fallen off the wall? There was an explanation, of course. When Eric had moved the painting to his office, he'd mistakenly installed one of the hangers into pure drywall. The weight of the painting had caused it to rip out and the painting fell. But sometimes, I think Anya was just watching over me, that her self-portrait carried a piece of her, and that night, she protected me from falling victim to the monster who ended her life. The painting now hangs up in my foyer. Every day I walk by it, and new details pop out at me. The deep, shadowy green of the room behind her, a perfectly painted strand of blonde hair, the glint in her piercing gray eyes, and sometimes, I think she's smiling back at me. I'm a Firewood. Appalachian Mountains talk about these things. They aren't lying. Skinwalker Stories from the past. This is a story my family told me when I was growing up. We live in a rural community on the Navajo reservation. My aunts and her two brothers were home alone while my grandparents had left for the evening to attend a chapter house meeting. They were in the house and like many people from the reservation, they didn't have electricity. It had been dark outside for an hour and my aunt and my uncles were getting ready for bed. Outside they heard noises, as if someone was moving things around outside. My oldest uncle went to look out the front window and saw a figure out by the truck. This was immensely out of the ordinary because the closest neighbor was miles away. Whatever it was opened the truck door and began to dig through the personal items that my family had left in the vehicle. My aunt and uncles were frightened by the sight and knew that they should have taken action. They took out the rifle and all steadied themselves to hold it up. They flung open the door and aimed the gun at the figure. The figure turned and started to walk towards them, totally unfazed by the weapon. My uncle pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. The figure drew closer, my aunt began to smell something like a rotting corpse. It was so strong it made her gag. My uncle continued to pull the trigger, with no luck, and the figure came closer and closer. Off in the distance, headlights were coming up the road. My grandparents were returning. The figure looked towards the light and started to move away and tucked itself behind a tree near the house. My oldest uncle ran towards the truck with a weapon. My grandfather ran into the house and over to the stove and grabbed a handful of ashes and rubbed over the gun and placed an ash-covered bullet into the chamber. He walked out into the porch and fired towards the tree. Whatever that thing was, didn't expect the gun to go off. The gunshot echoed and the dark figure began running. My grandma chased my aunt inside and my uncles and my grandfather went after it. There weren't many roads or paths, so as my grandfather and uncles chased after the figure, the truck was bouncing and the headlights were not fixed on one particular spot. My uncle swears that when even the headlights would hit the figure, he saw a woman. Not only that, whoever it was running on all fours like a bear. My grandfather eventually stopped the truck and as they neared the ditch that drops about 20 feet, he got out and began to yell in Navajo. My uncle says he was yelling about a local woman. He yelled that he wasn't scared and that he knew it was her and to leave his family alone. A few days passed and there was news that the woman that my grandfather was yelling about had passed. I've always been this man can't hurt anyone else ever again. Animal exploitation. 5 years ago, a video was posted to YouTube titled "Rescue the Pitiful Little Dog Falling Down the Drain." screaming for help. Nobody cares. In the video, a man is walking down an old, craggy sidewalk on his way to work when he hears a strange noise. He stops by an open crack in the ground to listen, and what he hears is a puppy in distress. Somehow, it got stuck in an abandoned storm drain. Thankfully, there's no grate, and the man is able to rescue the little dog. He crawls through the weeds, deep under the sidewalk, and pulls out a dirty little pup, crying and looking confused. The video has tens of thousands of views, and the channel behind it produced dozens of similar rescue videos, puppies in distress, dirty, mangled, broken, and of course a heroic figure swooping in to save them. Across all their content, the channel has amassed millions of views and hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I watched the video in absolute horror, not because the puppy was in danger, but because something about it didn't feel right. These types of videos are unfortunately very common on all of the popular video streaming platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. At first, it seems perfectly innocent. A group of kittens drowning in a river, a puppy with a broken leg, and an unwitting hero swooping in to save the poor, desperate creature. These videos garner incredible attention, get shared by every grandma with a smartphone. But the terrifying reality is, a lot of these videos are staged. When we watch Rescue the Pitiful Little Dog, there are clear signs that this video isn't genuine. Firstly, the man is already recording. He walks down the street on his way to work without a care in the world, when he just happens to stumble upon a puppy whining in a crack in the ground. In fact, he doesn't even stop to find where the whining is coming from. The camera just glides down perfectly to a single half-an-inch wide crack in the sidewalk, almost like he knew exactly where to look. And then all of a sudden, there's a second camera. Someone else is recording him rescuing the puppy. Not only do we never see this person behind the camera, I thought our hero was on his way to work. Who is this person? Is it a coworker? Well, in a way, it is. You see, oftentimes these videos are coming from economically poor countries. And with the surging popularity of animal videos in the early 2000s, people wanted a way to make some money. And nothing gets as many shares, likes, and comments as animal rescues. Unless you're a robot, watching an animal being saved is going to make you feel something. And that's for the vast majority of people. And you might just want to share that feeling with others. Because of this, animal rescue videos aren't just popular, they're lucrative. Millions of views can equal hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars on certain video sharing platforms. But how often does one find an animal in distress? Well, unless you're working for animal control, not often. I'll ask you this. How many times have you encountered anything like this in your own life? An animal in distress, tucked away under a sidewalk or lost in a storm drain? I bet most people could count on one hand the number of times, and truthfully, it might be zero. So if you're living in a poor nation, and if you want to start a business farming animal rescue videos, how do you do it? Do you wait around hoping to find an animal in distress? No, these people don't wait for danger, they are the danger. They purposefully endanger animals behind the scenes, and once the cameras are rolling, they can swoop in and save them. Here are some other video titles I encountered across many of the still active animal rescue accounts. Rescue the dog tied on the motorcycle. Rescuing a paralyzed abandoned puppy. Rescue 3 poor puppies in a plastic bag. These are not accidental discoveries. They're not spontaneous rescues. They're by design, each of them planned, staged, and recorded to pull at your heartstrings, garner your sympathy, and make a whole lot of money. But it's not just puppies. There are whole hosts of other species being tormented online. Puppies, monkeys, chickens, anything with 4 legs and a heartbeat is being exploited online right now. The most common format is animal abandoned by its owner, which accounts for about 30% of all fake rescue videos, but there are many more that are popular. Formats like an animal is almost attacked by a predator, where a baby animal will be put next to a snake and saved at the last second. Or animal saved from beneath rubble, where the people making the videos literally bury these poor creatures alive, and this sick trend isn't going away anytime soon. I found a Reddit post from 5 years ago listing 44 accounts that were most definitely allegedly producing fake content. Many of them have since been shut down or have rebranded amidst backlash, but some are still alive and kicking, despite the dangerous, disgusting, inhumane content. And there are so many other channels. Once you start looking for similar content, similar rescue videos, it just goes on and on. Anytime one gets shut down, two more seemingly take its place. And the horrible part about it is you can never be sure what's real and what isn't. I just recently saw a video of a monkey drowning in a river, getting rescued by a guy on a boat. And I have no idea if it was staged or not. And that's a disturbing thought. That really, there's no verifiable way to sift between the good and the bad. Everything is suspect once you kind of learn this. The type of animal exploitation, fake rescue videos are a rampant issue on all social media platforms. But what if people don't want to see an animal saved? What if they hate that animal so much they'd like to see it hurt, injured, maimed, even killed? Well, that's when we get into another type of animal endangerment, and a group so disgustingly evil it boggles my mind.
Boyfriend. We've been together almost 3 years. We live together. I support us 100%. In the time we've been together, he's worked maybe 2 months. He's depressed and anxious, and he steals all the oxygen and joy out of every room. He never wants to go anywhere and then complains that we never go anywhere. I got him an interview at my work, a moderately well-paid entry-level position. He refused to go, saying he wasn't ready, then spends time complaining about not having a job. You get the idea. Everything in our lives revolves around him and his moods. He cries, yells, or just sighs incessantly. There's no laughter or happiness in our home. I walk on eggshells all the time. I dread coming home from work. He grabbed me a few days ago and shook me so hard I'm bruised on my upper arms. The apartment is in my name, and he literally has nowhere to go because he has no friends and he refuses to contact his family. So he'd be homeless, and I can't do that to him, or any human really. I fantasize about being alone all the time, like only cooking or shopping or doing anything just for myself. It would be incredible to be able to breathe again. His birthday was last week, and I saved up for a month to get him something related to his hobby. When I gave it to him, he said, "I just told you I didn't want to do this anymore. What were you thinking?" I think at that point, any love I still felt for him just died. He doesn't cook, clean, care for his dog, or do anything but play video games. I'm trapped in a prison, and I just don't really care what happens to me anymore. I don't want to die, but I wouldn't be upset if I didn't wake up tomorrow, if that makes sense. I know I should do, but I'm just a dumb bitch. Thanks for reading. Typing it out helps. Edit. Well, this reached the front page, and now I'm super uncomfortable with everything, so I'm not going to be posting anymore. I appreciate all the advice, the tough love too. Hopefully I'll be back with a happy update in the future. Thanks for everything, Reddit. I was kidnapped when I
is not the most dangerous thing in the backcountry. Cutting firewood in the mountains of central Idaho. In many rural areas of the American West, cutting firewood in national forest is a necessary chore if you want a warm house through the winter. Our home in mountainous central Idaho was no exception. It was normal for my dad to pick me and my brothers up after school and head into the mountains for an afternoon of firewood gathering. My dad would fell the dead trees, then saw them into chunks. My brothers and I had the task of rolling the wood to the truck and loading it. We would continue this assembly line process until we had a truckload of wood, usually before nightfall. Hot, sweaty, and exhausted, we would pile into the truck cab and make our way down the mountain. At home the next day, we would unload and split the wood and stack it into neat little rows. This process was repeated until we had a winter's worth of fuel for our house, our grandma's cabin, and any extra for elderly neighbors. This particular afternoon, we decided to try a different logging road on the other side of the valley. This was well outside our familiar logging area. No real reason for the change, but my dad said he wanted a change of scenery. The logging road hadn't been maintained in some time. Large rocks and fallen branches littered the path. My brothers and I had to watch out in front, pushing rocks and wood out of the way as my dad lurched the truck up the switchbacks. Yard by yard, we slowly made our way up the mountain. That hike was physically brutal. As we ascended the mountain and got further into the trees, this odd feeling started to set in. I wasn't sure if it was the exhaustion from the hike or something more. There was an electricity in the air, like the whole mountain was buzzing at a wavelength just below my senses. In some odd way, it felt like the mountain knew we were there, and it wasn't welcome to the fact. I wanted to say something to my brothers, but before I opened my mouth, my younger brother said, "Does anyone else feel like we're not welcome here?" My older brother and I stopped in our tracks and looked at him. Both of us nodded in agreement. This moment was broken by my dad honking and motioning us to continue clearing the path. Reluctantly, we pushed forward to a small clearing in the woods where we finally stopped the truck. My dad, oblivious to our apprehension or simply choosing to ignore it, grabbed his saw and went to work. As the wood was felled and loaded, I couldn't shake this ominous feeling enveloping me like a dark shroud. I noticed my brothers were taking occasional glances over their shoulders as we worked. Everyone but my dad, it seemed, was on edge. The sun nestled down into the trees and twilight began to set in. As the light drained from the sky, my anxiety only intensified. It wasn't until my dad unexpectedly told us to load up that a wave of relief flooded over me. I could see the tension in my brothers melt away as well. The truck wasn't fully loaded, an oddity. Getting a half load was a waste, according to my dad. We would sometimes work into the dark just to make sure the truck was full, but tonight he seemed eager to head home. With everything loaded, we started down the road. Although dead tired, everyone seemed to be in a much lighter mood. We were chatting and cracking jokes while trying to blow off steam from the afternoon. We were almost out of the tree line and into the valley desert. Going down the switchbacks, you want to be careful, especially with a load, even if it was half that. A brown blur jumped from the downslope side of the switchback. Shit was the only word that came out of my dad's mouth as he slammed on the brakes. Loaded with wood and traveling downhill, there was no way to avoid smashing into the blur. The truck finally ground to a standstill. The four of us peered through the windshield, nobody saying a word. Illuminated in a yellow glow of our headlights was a crumpled body of deer. Grumbling and cursing the deer's existence, my dad exited the truck to investigate. Doing as they were told, my brothers stayed put in the truck. I didn't listen, following close behind my dad. The truck was fine. We hadn't been traveling fast when we smacked the deer, just some hair and blood in the grill guard. Hitting a deer really wasn't that unusual. The mountains were full of them. What was unusual was the deer dropped so quickly. At faster speeds, deer could still be upright and sprinting away to die in the woods after a collision. That last burst of an adrenaline dump. This one fell over like a rag doll. Before even approaching the carcass, a deep, foul smell hit us. Deer smell bad when they're alive, but this was on a whole other level. It was the smell of decay and rot. My stomach began to turn as we got closer. My nostrils were burning. Coming up on the deer, it was clearly dead. Really, really dead. The stench was so overwhelming, my eyes were watering. The body was a true horror scene. The deer's eyes were gone, replaced with sunken, hollow hole. As if to overcompensate for their absence, the tongue was swollen and black as coal. It could not be contained and hung out the side of its mouth. The underbelly was split open. Entrails and offal spilled into the dirt. In the dim headlights, it looked as though the deer's viscera were moving, wiggling almost. Holding my breath, I bent down for a closer look and my heart stopped. The deer, inside and out, was covered in maggots.
It was dead all right, but our truck didn't kill it. It clearly was dead for days, if not weeks. I backed away, retching. That electric anxiety came screaming back. My dad was always the quiet, stoic type, but right now, even in the dim headlights of the truck, I could see the abject horror in his face. His gaze wasn't on the deer, but focused down the mountain. Poorly masking the fear in his voice, he told me firmly to walk back to the truck and get inside. I obeyed without objection. As I grabbed the door handle, a loud shriek came out of the trees. Branches were shattering and breaking. Something was heading up the slope towards us. I slammed my door closed just as my dad reached the truck. Before his door was shut, he pressed on the accelerator. The truck launched forward, sending us over the deer carcass and racing downhill. With mine and my brothers yelling, it was hard to tell if the shrieking was following us. Our truck popped out of the tree line and into the desert sagebrush. Once out of the woods, everything quieted down. We were left with only a rumble of the engine and wind through the half-open windows. Pulling into our property, the truck came to a stop. We sat in silence. No one moved to leave the truck. Everyone started talking at once. We all had questions. What was that screaming? How does a dead deer jump uphill in front of a truck? There was no way the truck killed it. Dad just shook his head and motioned us to quiet down. That deer was dead when we hit it. It didn't jump out in front of us. It was thrown at us. We stared at him. He explained that all day up on the mountain he had felt uneasy. Not wanting to worry us boys, he kept it to himself. He described it like walking into a stranger's living room while they were upstairs asleep. That feeling never left him, and as twilight came, he happened to catch a shadow in the corner of his eye, not far into the woods, and saw figures moving from tree to tree. He couldn't focus on them long enough for a good look before they dodged behind trees. His stomach dropped. Working hard to keep his composure, he hurried us to the truck to leave. It was after hitting the deer and discovering it was long dead that my dad pieced together what was happening. Something threw that deer to get us to stop. Before the shrieking began, he could hear something moving in the darkness beyond the road. It was a trap. Running back to the truck could have started an ambush or triggered a prey drive, so we walked back to the truck. The second we were inside, he drove that truck downhill with no intention of stopping for anyone or anything. That feeling of electricity didn't disappear until we hit the county highway. My brothers and I never saw anything as we drove away, but those screams from the forest will never leave my mind. We didn't gather firewood the rest of the season. For the first time in his life, my dad just bought what we needed. And although we started to gather wood again the next season, we've never been back up that particular mountain. The Forest Service has permanently closed and reclaimed that road. The only way back up into those woods is a long hike, one I'm not interested in ever taking again. Whatever was on that mountain, whatever threw that deer carcass, whatever chased us out of the woods, it did not want us there. It wanted us gone, or worse, it wanted us dead. And alright, that wraps up Eerie. The fifth nail. According to one myth, the gypsies crafted 5 nails for Christ's execution, not 4. The 5th nail was made to pierce his heart, but the gypsies kept it hidden. In some stories, the women are punished, and in others, they are rewarded. This 5th nail is said to have once been an existing religious artifact with special healing powers. Its existence today is somewhat questionable, unless, of course, you consider the philosophical symbolism. The quote I just read, though it seems harmless, is anything but. It's an excerpt from one of the most disturbing pieces of online literature I have ever read. A collection of blog posts by a sick, demented criminal. And although normally the blog is very difficult to find, I scoured the internet and finally got my hands on it. A harrowing view into the mind of Joseph Edward Duncan III, American serial killer, on his infamous 5th Nail blog. Joseph Edward Duncan III was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina,
on February 25th, 1963. His father was a military man on active duty, so the family moved every year or two, all across the United States. He had many siblings and, for the most part, had a good early childhood. Although he claims it was awful, his siblings insist it was a good home. In 1979, his parents decided to separate. His older sisters moved out on their own. His younger brother went to live with his father, and Joseph, alone, lived with his mother. Now, very little is known about his childhood from that time forward, but we do know about his actions, because Duncan, when living in Tacoma at the age of 15, held a 9-year-old boy hostage at gunpoint and did unspeakable things to him. That was his first criminal offense that we know of. The following year, he stole a car and was sent to an all-boys group home for juvenile offenders called the Jesse Dyslin Boys Ranch, which, by the way, this boys ranch could be a whole video by itself. Very problematic institution, but that's not the topic we're covering today. While he was there, he admitted to a therapist that, before the age of 16, he had brutalized an estimated 13 younger boys by various different means, including binding their hands and feet before carrying out his sadistic, perverted acts on them. I'd like to reiterate that I said estimated, as in he wasn't sure of an exact number. Estimated. He was released from the boys' home in 1980, and in that same year, he broke into a neighbor's house, stole their guns, kidnapped another preteen, and did the same shit he did to the other estimated 13 boys. So yeah, this guy was a monster. And from what I know of him, he was always a monster. After this final attack at 17 years old, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He served 14 of those and was let out on parole in 1994. Duncan settled in Seattle, where he tried to keep his head down. He spent 2 years as a free man doing unspeakable things we'll discuss later. Then, 2 years later, in 1996, he was caught violating his parole by smoking weed and was again in jail. After several weeks, he was released again under new probationary conditions. After his release, unbelievably, he violated parole again and was rearrested again and was finally released in 2000 at the turn of the century. This time, he wanted a whole new start, so he moved to Fargo, North Dakota to be closer to his mother and adult siblings. But Duncan had some resentments. After all that, all of his sick crimes, leaving behind 14 victims in the wake of his sadism before the age of 16, he felt he was treated wrongly. Duncan believed that he shouldn't be judged for his crimes, and without a platform to speak his mind, in 2004, he started making blog posts. He called it Fifth Nail. Here is an excerpt from his first ever post, edited for decency, which I'm gonna say was incredibly difficult. January 4th, 2004. Just found out that a 5-year-old girl went missing from Chisholm, Minnesota on June 14th, 2003, this year. I did not even know until today that this happened, so I tried to figure out what I was doing that day, since I'm always afraid of getting accused when something like this happens. You might say that finding out about the girl missing is the most proverbial last straw, because of all the other recent incidences in the news lately, especially regarding missing people and the resulting intensification of the persecution of perverse criminal offenders. I've decided to start this blog as a sort of check and balance of where I am. This is for my own safety. I figure it is just a matter of time before I am falsely accused of some crime or another. I already had the police at my door telling me some women downtown were waving my picture around that they printed from the internet, accusing me of harassing them for a date. The visits was very intimidating, and not friendly. I was warned that I was being watched as a known perpetrator of perverse crimes. The visit made me consult an attorney for advice. He told me there was nothing I could do unless charges were filed. I feel like a southern black man, just wondering when the lynch mob is going to show up at my door. His paranoia, it turns out, was correct. Remember that 2-year period where Duncan was free before, being arrested 2 more times? Well, turns out the police suspected he wasn't keeping his head down in that time frame. They believed his crimes had only gotten worse. And while Duncan was blogging about his woeful existence as one of the most disgusting human beings I've ever had the misfortune of learning the name of, the police were piecing together his latest sadistic crime. Now, before I get into that, I'm going to read one more excerpt from his blog. There's about 2 years of regular entries, and most of them are absolutely vile. And frankly, I don't want to read any more than I have to. So just to get a clear picture of this man, here's another entry for you from his infamous online diary. And viewer discretion, because this is one of the more insane ones I found. February 2nd, 2005. I committed a perverse crime when I was very young. I was sentenced to a perverse crimes program for adults where half the men in my treatment group sat and fantasized about me. After 2 years, I was a senior member when the state therapist paid a surprise visit to my mother's house and propositioned her, saying it would help your son in the program if you cooperate with me. When she told me about it, I quit the program and was sent to prison, where accordingly to at least one official report that was written before I was sentenced, because of his appearance and age, he would likely be mistreated by other inmates if sent to prison. True story. I thought I would only do a few years and get out not having to be around such evil people who represent the system. But because of hysteria, I ended up spending over 12 more years in prison before finally being awarded parole. All my psych reports say I am a low risk. I was just a kid acting out of confusion over my own experiences. And studies show conclusively that my type of offense is rarely repeated. And yet almost 30 years later, while I have no parole, nor have I ever committed a new crime, the police insist on knocking on my door several times a year, and sometimes in the wee hours. Check that I still live here. I have no privacy at all. Anyone in the state, country, even world can find out where I live, what I look like, and what I did when I was a kid just by typing my name on any web browser. This does not only hurt me. If that was all, I could accept it because what I did was bad. But it hurts my mother, my family, my friends, and even my neighbors who thought I was a great guy. Until they find out. Then they are afraid of me. It hurts society because it scares people into thinking every strange person is a suspect, and at the same time it deceives them into thinking the government can make them safe by telling them about the bad ones. Even the Fargo police website admits few convicted perverse criminals ever reoffend, so some of the more ignorant people in the world will read this and think they deserve it. I call these people ignorant because they don't see the hurt they are causing. More children, more victims, just because they are afraid to admit their own secret desires. I cannot express to you all how much I absolutely, to my core, fucking despise this man. The fact that I just had to speak those words out loud disgusts me. But it's important for you to know who this man was. Irredeemable scum. One of the worst people I've ever written about. Bar none. And the self-proclaimed innocent Duncan was about to go on a killing spree. May 16th, 2005. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The grown family are spending the night together. They were a tight-knit household, a loving family. The mother of the household, Brenda, then 38, was asleep in bed with her boyfriend, Mark McKenzie. In the adjacent room slept her kids, 13-year-old Slade, 9-year-old Dylan, and 8-year-old Shasta. It had been a peaceful, uneventful day, and tonight they were all resting easy. But not for long. At approximately 11 p.m., Joseph Edward Duncan broke into the home. Brenda woke up and rushed into Dylan and Shasta's bedroom. Someone's in the house. She gathered the kids with her boyfriend, and they ran into the living room, trying to escape. When they encountered Duncan, dressed in all black, carrying a gun, Duncan tied up the family. At some point, he pulled Dylan and Shasta outside, leaving them alone on the lawn. Though immobile, inside, the sound of sickening thuds could be heard as Duncan bludgeoned the boyfriend, mother, and eldest son to death. The two surviving children, Dylan and Shasta, were kidnapped. For 6 weeks, Duncan took them to campsites and did unspeakable things to them. After 5 weeks, he accidentally killed Dylan when a shotgun misfired. After the death of her brother, Shasta was nearly killed also, but she convinced him not to by using his family nickname, Jet. Eventually, the two were found at a Denny's in Shasta's hometown of Coeur d'Alene. Shasta is the only surviving member of the grown family. Joseph Edward Duncan III was arrested and convicted of murder for the nighttime massacre of the grown family. But that's not all. Remember that 2-year parole period? Turns out he spent that time on another, earlier killing spree. He was found responsible for the deaths of Samiaho White, 11 years old, her half-sister, Carmen Cubayas, 9 years old, and Anthony Martinez, 10 years old. The jurors who sentenced Joseph Duncan to the death penalty had to be offered counseling for the horrific evidence shown on trial, including a 33-minute video of him physically attacking one of his victims. He died at the age of 58 from brain cancer. The Fifth Nail blog is an x-ray into the mind of a horrific, disgusting vermin known as Joseph Edward Duncan III. Like I said, there are 2 years of blog posts, but honestly, you might want to skip this rabbit hole. There's a ton of information, a ton of description and detail on his Fifth Nail blog, but at the end of the day, the only thing that matters in this story are the victims. All of them. Young and gone way too soon. I hope they can rest easy knowing. The nation has been announcing people's names for a while now. I just found out what it meant. For as long as I can remember, WLNK 97.3, The Link, has been the local radio station in my town. It's one of those stations that plays a little bit of everything, old rock, some pop hits, even a few talk shows when the ad money dries up. Everyone listens to it. You know, that kind of station that's always on in the background at diners, garages, and grocery stores. I'd been a casual listener my whole life. It was dependable, familiar, safe. But all of that changed 3 months ago, the night I noticed something I can't explain. Something no one else seems to believe, no matter how many times I try to tell them. It started on a Monday night. I've been driving home late from work, flipping between stations, when I landed on WLNK. I wasn't paying much attention, just another evening commute. The DJ was wrapping up a song, probably something by Fleetwood Mac, when he cut to his usual banter. "And now, the name of the night," he said, his voice dropping into a strange, almost playful tone. There was a pause, static buzzing faintly in the background. Then, with eerie clarity, the DJ said a single name. Jessica Browning. It felt odd. There was no context, no explanation, just a name dropped into the ether like a stone into still water. I shrugged it off. Maybe it was part of a contest or some weird new segment, but I couldn't shake the way it felt. The delivery was too strange, too deliberate. I forgot about it until the following Monday. I was driving again, same time, same station, when the DJ did it again. And now, the name of the night. This time, the name was Robert Sanchez. Another pause, another song. The pattern continued every Monday at exactly 11:05 p.m. One name, no explanation. Just dropped into the void. By the 5th week, curiosity has gotten the better of me. I started listening religiously, notebook in hand. Each Monday night, I'd jot down the name. And each week, I'd search social media, local news sites, everything or anything that might explain what this segment was about. At first, I found nothing. No contestants, no winners, no mentions of the name anywhere. But then, something changed. One week, the name was Caleb Howard. It stuck with me because Caleb worked at the gas station near my apartment. We weren't friends or anything, but I chatted with him a few times while paying for a coffee or snacks. He was a nice guy, always had a smile on his face. I didn't think much of it until a week later, when I stopped at the gas station and saw a "Help Find Caleb" poster taped to the door. He'd gone missing. The clerk behind the counter, a college kid with a nervous energy, told me Caleb had just disappeared after a shift. No one knew where he'd gone. His car was still in the parking lot. I couldn't believe it. Caleb's name had been said on WLNK exactly a week before. I told myself it was a coincidence, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. I started digging. I went through the names I'd written down in my notebook and searched for any trace of them. By now, I had 6 names, including Caleb's. 3 of them, Jessica Browning, Robert Sanchez, and Caleb Howard, were confirmed missing. Their faces stared back at me from articles and social media posts, plastered with desperate pleas from family and friends. No one else seemed to see the pattern. I tried asking people about the radio show, and everyone looked at me like I was crazy. A few people said they listened to WLNK, but none of them had noticed the name of the night segment. Some even insisted it just didn't exist. I couldn't explain it. How could a radio broadcast that I heard every week leave no trace? By the time the 8th name was announced, I was obsessed. The name was Emily Carter. I didn't know her personally, but a quick search on social media turned up her profile. She was 28, lived on the other side of town, and worked as a veterinary assistant. Her posts were filled with photos of smiling dogs and cats, each caption brimming with positivity. I couldn't let her vanish like the others. I sent her a message. It was awkward, clumsy. "Hi, you don't know me, but I heard your name mentioned on a radio station. It's hard to explain, but I think something bad might happen to you soon. Please be careful." She didn't reply. Over the next week, I checked her profile obsessively. She posted like normal, pictures of her dog, updates from work, jokes about her favorite TV show. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Then, exactly 7 days later, her post stopped. I knew what that meant. The next morning, I saw a news article. Local veterinary assistant reported missing. She was gone. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I started visiting WLNK's building after hours, trying to figure out who was behind the segment. The station was housed in an old, nondescript building downtown. I watched it for hours, hoping to catch a glimpse of the DJ or anyone who might know about the names. Nothing. On a whim, I tried calling the station during the day. The receptionist who answered sounded confused when I asked about the 11:05 broadcast. "We don't have anything like that on our schedule," she said. "Are you sure you're listening to WLNK?" "Yes," I insisted. "It happens every Monday night." There was a long pause. Then quietly she said, "We don't have live programming at that time." Last Monday, the name was Brandon Lewis. I found him online, a local contractor with a wife and 2 kids. I didn't bother messaging him this time. No one ever believed me. Instead, I decided to confront the source. At 10:30 p.m., I parked outside WLNK. The building was dark except for a single light on the 2nd floor. I waited, heart pounding, until 11:05. When the time came, I heard it, the muffled sound of the broadcast through the building's walls. "And now, the name of the night." I burst through the door. Inside, the station was eerily silent. The reception desk was empty. The hallways dark. I followed the faint sound of the DJ's voice up a flight of creaky stairs to the 2nd floor. At the end of the hallway, a door was slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the corridor. I pushed it open. The room was empty, just an old desk, a microphone, and a tangle of outdated broadcasting equipment. The light on the on-air sign flickered weakly, and the static-filled voice of the DJ continued. "Brandon Lewis." I stepped closer, and the equipment suddenly shut off. The room plunged into silence. Then I saw it. Taped to the wall behind the desk was a list of names, written in neat, loopy handwriting. My heart stopped when I saw the last entry. Ethan Grant. That's my name. It's been 6 days since that broadcast. I've locked myself in my apartment, every door and window sealed. The phone rings sometimes, but I don't answer it. Tomorrow is day 7. If anyone hears this, if anyone knows what's happening, please don't let them say another name, because no one ever comes back.